Hi, this is Catherine Bettis, and I'm speaking to you today from University of Texas Rio Grande Valley down here about an endangered snail that lives up here in West Texas, the Phantom Tryonia. This species was listed by Fish and Wildlife Service in 2013, shortly followed by the announcement by the Apache Oil Company of the Alpine High Play, a large fracking field that completely underlies the springs where the snail lives. And aside from fracking pressure on their water, these springs have been going dry for a while. So this is Phantom Cave where they live since the 1930s. It has now gone dry and is maintained by a pump, and their largest site at San Solomon Springs, which is steadily declining. Here's a picture of a restored wetland at San Solomon Springs. That's Balmorhea State Park. And the goals of this project were to essentially learn anything about these snails. How many of them are remaining so that we can have that baseline population estimates to look at changes in their populations over time, and also to learn about their reproduction to assist captive propagation efforts that are underway. Do they reproduce seasonally? Or aseasonally, as you would expect from the consistent thermal properties of the springs that they live in. Okay, here's the picture of almost all the springs where they occur. We have San Solomon Springs, which is the main swimming hole, a canal that brings water to these two restored desert wetlands, and then other sites at Phantom Cave and two other small ones in the Sandia Springs. So what we did was use a GIS habitat map to randomly select sites between 10 and 25 at each accessible spring at all of the different habitat types, vegetative types, or substrate types that were available in each. And then when we went to sample, we used those pre-selected sites, found them with a handheld GPS, and then sampled them with a Lang benthic sampler. So you put this over the substrate, slide the little door shut underneath, and you've taken your benthic macroinvertebrate sample. We sieve those, pick them, count them, sort them, identify everything. And then for the Tryonia cheatumi, we measured their shells length and width and height in order to look at reproductive effort. So just a snapshot of what we learned about how many of the snails there are. Around about 55 million if we average across our 2 years of sampling. Most at the big swimming hole in San Solomon Springs, about 50 million, a substantial number at Phantom, and then more scattered throughout the rest of the sites, but in smaller numbers. Now about seasonal variation and reproductive effort. So Tryonia have separate sexes. They're viviparous, and so a female broods about 15 individuals in her brood pouch and then gives birth to live individuals. They probably live a year and a half. We don't really know. And so we took the 27 or 100 or so individuals that we measured from 3 different sites, and those are very not normal data, and so we used some non-parametric tests to compare them. And so what we found for 3 sites, San Solomon Pool, Canal, and Phantom Lake, what you have on the y-axis is shell length. What we found is that the shell length distributions are different in most seasons and sites. And so there is not a continuous rate of production of offspring throughout the year. They definitely have seasons when more offspring are found. So for San Solomon Pool, we see more juvenile individuals in the spring and in the winter. For Phantom Lake, in contrast, in the summer is when we saw most of the individuals, the juvenile individuals. So they appear to reproduce at different seasons, but that's different across the sites that we sampled. So just to sum up a few of the things that we learned about this species, there's a lot of them remaining at about 8 springs that have dried up and are drying up with heavy human usage of the water in the region for other reasons, including fracking and irrigation and municipal use. There is seasonal variation in reproduction with different peak seasons at the different sites. 97% of the snails of this species that remain live here in the big swimming hole at San Solomon Springs, mostly giving birth in winter and spring. Please come by and chat more about snails or Tryonia cheatumi and go see my students' posters. I hope to talk with you at the conference.